All right. If you would, turn to the book of 3 John. That's where we'll read that text tonight, and then we'll be all over the New Testament. But that is our text for the evening. We've been going through the letters of John, 1 John, and then last week was 2 John, and then this evening we will wrap up the series, if you will, meaning we've completed all the text, but we do have one more class that will come from the letters of John next week, sort of a closure, wrapping it all together, especially with some of the themes that you remembered from 1 John that really stuck out to you and resonated with you. But we're just going to, before we read, let's talk about, so the first book was written just to all sorts of Christians everywhere, to my beloved children, everybody who John went and taught. It wasn't written to a church, it wasn't written to a person, it was written to a whole bunch of people. The second book was written to the elect lady, which is most likely a local congregation. And then this third book, as we're going to read tonight, is written to Gaius. So it's written to an individual. So all three books, we have different means of John's communication, going to various different groups and people. And tonight you'll see that the language is just a little bit different as he's speaking to a person. And not just with pronouns being different, but the intentionality that he speaks. So let's go ahead and read all 15 verses of 3 John. The elder to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, I pray that all may go well with you, and that you may be in good health, as it goes well with your soul. For I rejoiced greatly when the brothers came and testified to your truth, as indeed you are walking in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Beloved, it is a faithful thing you do in all your efforts for these brothers, strangers as they are, who testified to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on their journey in a manner worthy of God. For they have gone out for the sake of the name, accepting nothing from the Gentiles. Therefore, we ought to support people like these, that we may be fellow workers for the truth. I have written something to the church, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge our authority. So, if I come, I will bring up what he is doing, talking wicked nonsense against us. And not content with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers and also stops those who want to and puts them out of the church. Beloved, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. Whoever does good is from God. Whoever does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has received a good testimony from everyone and from the truth itself. We also add our testimony, and you know that our testimony is true. I had much to write to you, but I would rather not write with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we will talk face to face. Peace be to you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends, every one of them. All right, so let's identify the people. First of all, we have John, who's writing the letter. We have Gaius, who the letter is written to. And then we have two D names, Demetrius and Diotrephes. Diotrephes, no bueno, no good. Demetrius, good. He's only in one verse, just says he has a good reputation, and I'm adding to that, vouching for him, essentially. So we won't really talk about Demetrius tonight, but we will talk about Gaius and what John says to him and encouraging him, and we will talk about Diotrephes. So the first 4 verses of 3 John are very, very similar to the beginning verses in 2 John, where John is simply encouraging Gaius that I am rejoicing that you are walking in the truth. He says he has no greater joy than when his children walk in the truth. He's emphasizing that because just like in 2 John, Gaius is going through some things or seeing some things. The contrast tonight is what Gaius is doing is good. He is helping the brothers, those who have gone out for the name. What verse is that? In the sake of the name, verse 7, for they have gone out for the sake of the name. Gaius doesn't know these people. He calls them strangers, but they've gone out for the ministry of God. Diotrephes is the other side of that coin. Diotrephes is not accepting those strangers, if you will, into the church. I did not have, or did not find, and did not ask Ryan for a grammatical breakdown of 3 John. And so I'm uncertain if the church that Diotrephes is in is the same church that Gaius is in when he talks in verse 9, I have written something to the church, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge our authority. Something John is not doing is he's not gossiping. He's making statements. He also isn't asking Gaius to do anything. So, other than continue to do what you are doing, which is accepting the strangers, supporting those who are ministering to the church and trying to spread the gospel, and what Diotrephes is not doing, which is not letting those individuals into the church. So that's what the letter is about. What I would like to do this evening is I would like to examine sort of the two themes, which is hospitality, which Gaius is commended in providing, and then handling difficult people, which Diotrephes is the difficult person in this situation. So turn over to Luke 10. It'll take me a minute. Turn over to Luke 10. So in Luke, we could read this in chapter 9 when Jesus tells the 12 and sends the 12 out. But we're going to read it in chapter 10 where he sends the 72 out. And Luke 10, beginning in verse 5, reads, and he's speaking to his disciples that Jesus is sending out to prepare the way for him. Jesus says, whatever house you enter, first say, peace be to this house. And if a son of peace is there, your peace will rest upon him. But if not, it will return to you. And remain in the same house, eating and drinking what they do provide. For the laborer deserves his wages. Do not go from house to house. Okay, I probably should have started in verse 4, because he tells them, don't carry money, don't carry a knapsack, no sandals, and greet no one on the road. So they're going with essentially nothing. Jesus is sending them out with nothing. And so going out with nothing and going to people's house and saying, peace be with you, and then if they are hospitable to you, then they are to accept that hospitality. And Jesus tells the 12 the same thing at the beginning of the beginning of chapter 9. There's a lot of layers to that, likely. But what I would like us to think about is that they needed to accept the hospitality of others. We could talk about how they weren't to be reliant on the things that they brought out, which is 100% true, because Jesus told them to go with nothing. But what I would like us to, we could focus on whatever you'd like to focus on, but talk about is that they accepted hospitality. I think we're almost at 2 years with worshiping here, not quite a year where we've actually lived here and been able to be full-time. Giving hospitality as a whole is not an issue with this congregation. It's one of the most hospitable congregation I've been a part of, hands down. And that is a blessing and a wonderful thing. Except in order to give hospitality, we must have people willing to accept hospitality. And I think that's a different skill. I think accepting hospitality is a different skill than providing hospitality. Sometimes I tell my dad the American in us gets in the way of the Christian in us, because the American in us says, I've got this, I'm just going to pull myself up by my bootstraps, I don't need anybody's help, and I'm just going to continue on. But we're told, and we've seen, that accepting hospitality is necessary, and giving hospitality is necessary. Thoughts on that? Or hospitality in general as it relates to 3 John? Yeah.
This isn't exactly hospitality, but one time, this was years ago, this is one of those stories that, now that I'm thinking about it, I'll probably stay up tonight, just because it's...
Sorry?
Well, I don't know, it's a silly thing, but it's kind of haunting in some ways, because I just feel so rotten about it. But I I said something years ago about, I don't know what happened, my tree, something happened. And James showed up one Sunday with a chainsaw in a box. He had bought me a chainsaw because I said something about whatever, a tree or something like this. And I said to him, I regret this very much. This was the wrong thing to do. But I said, no, I don't want your chainsaw. You don't have to, like I just said it in passing. You don't need to buy me a chainsaw, just because I said something. And I remember the look on his face like, but I got you this chainsaw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a horrible feeling, but that thing is true where we're supposed to do good things, but if we don't let each other do good things, then that's a problem.
Right. Thanks for sharing. Sorry. Other thoughts? John is talking to Gaius, and he's specifically talking about hospitality for those who are going out and ministering. There are many types of hospitality mentioned in the New Testament. We don't have time to go all of those places and read all of those things. As long as we understand, and when we have a hospitality class or lesson, understand that it doesn't just apply to Christians, it doesn't just apply to strangers, it doesn't just apply to those who are ministering to the saints. But I do want to emphasize that it's really, really important that we support those who are ministering, who are dedicating, evangelizing. I wanted to say dedicating their entire lives to serving the Lord. It's what we should all do. But I think you understand what I mean by it's their profession. And so Titus 3, if you'll turn over to Titus 3. Titus 3, and we may go to 1 Peter. I don't have 1 Peter on the board. But so this hospitality pops up as I've been going through all of these places that hospitality is in the New Testament. At the end of letters, it's in a lot of the letters at the end, like, hey, I'm telling you all these things that are specific to you and in the situation you're in, but don't forget all these other things that are also really, really important. It kind of gets thrown in there. So Titus 3, beginning in 13, we'll read 13 and 14. Do your best to speed Zenas the lawyer and Apollos on their way. See that they lack nothing. I'm going to read that again. See that they lack nothing. And let our people learn to devote themselves to good works so as to help cases of urgent need and not be unfruitful. Does anybody have a translation that reads differently that doesn't mind reading aloud? I read the ESV because these translations are quite a bit different. Anybody have something not ESV? Titus 3, 13 and 14, and especially verse 14. I'm really just 14. 14 reads in the ESV, let our people learn to devote themselves to good works so as to help cases of urgent need and not be unfruitful.
And let our people also learn to engage in good deeds to meet pressing needs, that they may not be unfruitful.
Okay, so two big things. See that they lack nothing. Those people who are preaching, who are ministering, see that they lack nothing. Well, we're already paying them so much. I know they just had another kid. See that they lack nothing. And 14, we need to devote ourselves to good works so when there is need, we can provide for that need. And essentially, we don't live unfruitful lives, that we work for the betterment of the kingdom. And in this situation, it's to support those who are ministering, whether it's locally or abroad. Thoughts, comments on Titus hospitality? I think I've been in congregations where supporting those, I should say, there are congregations who can't support a preacher on their own, and so outside support is necessary. That's very, very common. But there are also congregations who don't want to support a man or a family in the work that they do, and I don't think we're currently in that situation, but it's important that we know what we have a responsibility to do as individuals and as a congregation, and that is part of hospitality. All right. Turn to Galatians 6, if you would. So again, this is all on 3 John, which is Gaius is being hospitable to these strangers. It doesn't say if John sent these strangers to Gaius, or if it's likely, or if these strangers have been and then have left. It doesn't appear that that's the case, but somehow it's gotten back to John that Gaius is doing what he should by accepting them and supporting them. And typically we turn to Galatians 6 as we're talking about bearing with one another, but there's definitely a hospitality point in here as well. Let's begin in verse 6. Would someone read Galatians 6, verses 6 through 10, please?
Let the one who has taught the word share all good things with the one who teaches. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that he will also reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption. And the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. So then, if we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of the household of faith.
Thank you. All of that is great. I would like to point you to verse 6, where it says, one who is taught the word must share all good things with the one who teaches. Hospitality. And verse 10, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, hospitality to all, but especially to those who are of the household of faith. What obstacles do we have here as individuals or as a congregation in showing hospitality or in accepting hospitality? What do we struggle with?
I think as women, we struggle with presentation and perfection in Pinterest and Instagram and comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, we have had a 1,200 square foot home, and I used to think, oh, my house is too little, and, you get over that really quick, though, when you realize there's a lot of people that you could share an evening with and build bridges and relationships with and possibly change their whole family tree.
I think you don't give yourself enough credit. Not everyone gets over it. Like you said, you just get over that when you realize it. Well, not everybody does. You did, and we're...
Yeah. And it's not easy to get over. I mean, you just have to do it and keep doing it. Because biblical hospitality isn't entertaining. Those are two totally different things.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Brian?
I think the biggest thing that me and Melissa talked about is you fill up your life and your time gets away from you. So I think it takes a conscious decision to actually carve out the ability in your life, just like going to church on Sunday. You got to carve out and be intentional about being able to be hospitable, because we were talking, and we used to have people over all the time, and then it's like all of a sudden we're like, in 6 months, and it's like time gets away. So if you're not intentional about it, it's very easy just to blank that out.
Yeah, Zena?
It's kind of like, if you lose a close relative or a close family member, like a parent, it's like grief sometimes has no time limit, but then it's like, as it goes on, you try to find ways to say, for instance, if a negative person come up to you and say, oh, get over it, you have to get over that death of your parent. And it's like, you try to find ways to cope with it, and some people make you feel that, but it's like grief has no time limit, and life is just like, get yourself.
Yeah? Yeah, no. And sorry, there were two comments back to back. My brain was processing both of them. Ryan, to your point, yeah, intentionality. Cindy, she's not here. She said last week after class, she was commenting, because she made a comment in class and she felt like I don't know, she felt like she didn't articulate it well, but I thought she did, and it was lifestyle. It becomes who you are. That's the walk. The walking becomes who you are, but if we're not careful, then who we are, being intentional with all of these things, slowly we drift away from that, and our lifestyle changes because, as you said, it just fills up. And I think that's very real and very well said.
When we talk about giving our contribution on Sunday mornings, sometimes we'll say that we set aside monies that we've purposed in our heart, beforehand. And I think that goes along with what they're saying about hospitality, is that you have to set aside, get the purpose in your heart that you're going to do these kinds of things so that when you have opportunity or the opportunity arises to do these things, you're prepared and you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay?
This relates to what Mark said and also what Ryan said, like the accepting hospitality, the accepting, if Lisa's perspective is, here's what as women, like at least a male perspective is, I don't necessarily want to accept what you're going to give me, financially speaking, that one's really difficult. And if someone has set aside money to give to you, or whatever that thing is, I'm even thinking of Mark Sinnett, he talked about how he would teach classes, he was a preacher years ago, and he would talk about, he would preach and teach in classes, and somebody would give him essentially half a cow, because he would do that.
Wow.
And he like, I have to accept this. These people are wanting to give me this for the work that I'm doing. It's a great example of what I think we're reading in Scripture. And it's the same thing. If somebody's willing to give me a few $100s for something, I have to accept it, even though I'm embarrassed by it. It might be whatever to me. Like, why? That shouldn't be it at all.
Right.
I have to allow them to do something biblical and godly.
Yeah. I think that's when I say the American in us or the pridefulness in us, whatever it is, that's where I think.
This
That's
is super embarrassing, but growing up, our door was never locked at our house, never locked. There was always some other person at our kitchen table for dinner. We were like always sitting down for a family movie and someone would barge in. And I remember all three of us Smith kids being like, Mom and Dad, this is so inconvenient. We don't get any family time. We don't get to just sit on the couch in our pajamas and relax and just kick back and just hang out. That was not in our house. We did not grow up in a house that was closed off to the world. And I remember being so frustrated with my parents because it was just like you were constantly on. You could never just, relax.
Yeah.
But looking back, I think that is like the reason why us kids are faithful, because it was so inconvenient. And our parents, like, it was their mission for our house to be a place for everyone to feel welcome and for everyone to sit there and safely question the questions in life. But like as an adult now, I look back and I'm like, thank you for giving us a very inconvenient life, because there's so many people here that wouldn't be here if our door would have been locked. So it's super inconvenient. It is not fun to grow up in a house like that all the time. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was awesome and super special, but I wouldn't have changed it at all. Like looking back, it totally made us Smith kids the way we are. And I'm like so thankful that my parents didn't like give in to our smart mouths and just give us what we wanted, because I mean, so many people wouldn't be here. So.
I'm an emotional person, and you got me right. Yeah. So, your testimony to your parents is fantastic. And I don't think it's anything to be embarrassed about. You were a kid, and they were teaching you by living it, right? They were living it. They weren't being like, hey, this is what it says. They were living it. So, thanks for sharing. All right. Hospitality. We won't go to Romans, but Romans 12. Romans 12 says, essentially, be hospitable, but with whatever you're given, right? Like whatever you have, whatever gift you have, whatever your thing is, that's how you are to be hospitable. It doesn't have to be the way you imagine it in your brain or Pinterest or Instagram. That's not what it needs to be. That's what Romans 12 says. All right, let's talk about difficult people. Let's go back and I'm going to reread the part of 3 John that talks about Diotrephes, and we'll sort of see what John says about him again, because he's a difficult person. 3 John verse 9. I have written something to the church, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge our authority. So if I come, I will bring up what he is doing, talking wicked nonsense against us, and not content with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers and also stops those who want to and puts them out of the church. Depending on the translation you read, he's either putting the people out of the church who want to bring them in, or he's putting the people out of the church who are strangers and want to come in. When you read it in the New King James, it puts the commas where it seems like he's kicking the people who are inside the church out as they're trying to bring strangers in. When I read the ESV, it sounds like he's just keeping the people out of the church who want to come in. I don't think it really matters, but that's what we've got going on. The point John is making, he says it in the next verse, just so we're all clear and we can kind of talk about handling difficult people, is do not imitate evil, imitate good. So what Diotrephes is doing, not what you should be doing. What I told you and encouraged you for earlier, that is what you should be doing. That is good. So that's, I believe, John's point in writing this letter. But let's talk about handling difficult people. 1st and 2nd John are written about the dissenters, the Antichrist. They're bringing a different gospel. They're saying Jesus did not, the Son of God did not come in the flesh. He did not die on the cross. That's not what they're saying about Diotrephes. John does not say he's bringing a different gospel. John does not say he's doing any false teaching. That doesn't mean he wasn't, but he's pointed out every other time. So he just appears to not be accepting who John is, that John has authority, which is obviously an issue. But he doesn't tell Gaius to do anything about it, other than don't imitate him. Thoughts about that before we move on? Because, again, I don't know if they're in the same congregation. If one of you, if you feel like, no, when I read it, he's definitely in the same congregation, or maybe they're in separate congregations, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. But how about let's just talk about the fact that John doesn't tell Gaius to do anything about it. All right. He's a difficult person. Turn over to Romans 16. Paul, let's talk about the people we don't want anything to do with, is where we're going to go first. We'll go for Romans 16, beginning in verse 17. I appeal to you, brothers, to watch out for those who cause divisions and create obstacles, contrary to the doctrine that you have been taught. Avoid them. For such persons do not serve our Lord Christ, but their own appetites, and by smooth talk and flattery, they deceive the hearts of the naive. That's kind of 1st and 2nd John. Like, ignore them, don't have anything to do with those people. They're not serving the Lord. Titus, we're going to go back to Titus, if you would please. We're going to tie these two together because it's talking about people who are divisive specifically. Titus 3, and in verse 10. As for a person who stirs up division, after warning him once and then twice, have nothing more to do with him, knowing that such a person is warped and sinful, he is self-condemned. So, divisive people. We don't want to have anything to do with them. Paul here in Titus says they're self-condemned. Stay away from those people. Very clear. He's not talking about people outside of the body. These are people inside the body because you cannot divide what you are not a part of. And so it's very clear he's talking about people who at least once were a part of the body. Get rid of them. Warn them once, warn them twice, get rid of them. Thoughts on how we're to handle those difficult people? That's not easy to do, I don't think, if you've never been a part of a situation where there's been a division in a body, because they're you, right? At one point, they were you sitting there who we have some relationship with, big or small. And so when there's divisions, that's hard. I was thinking about it on the way here, like the impact of one conversation that goes poorly and can cause divisions, and how just one conversation can splinter not only a relationship, which we know, but also a congregation. So stay away from divisive people. Ryan?
I got two things. The
Please.
first is the explanation of his motive, which is probably going to get highlighted in my Bible. Why is he the way that he is? Because he likes to put himself first.
Yeah.
That's probably where, I don't really have anything to say about it, but it's like one of those things.
That's
that
why
just
he
meditate
is
on, you
the
know?
way he is.
He's more important than everybody else, and he's better than everybody. His opinion matters more than everybody else's opinion, and he puts himself first.
Different translations state that differently. And it's 3 John 9, who likes to put himself first in the ESV. I wish I would have written down some of them, because it was interesting how it got translated. But yeah, he's selfish.
The second thing is, this balance is something that I find hard. This is a really good passage, because I just opened my Bible to one page here, and on the left-hand side, it says in 2 John 10, if anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not receive him into your house or give him a greeting. So there's this thing that we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then on this side of the page, it's somebody who is hard-nosed, you know, like he kicks people out who he shouldn't kick out. And that, I don't want to be either one of these people. Like, I don't want to be the guy who refuses to do what I'm told to do, but I also don't want to be the hard-nosed who goes too far.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to stand before God. I wouldn't want to be Diotrephes on Judgment Day.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Psalm 36 that we just talked about on Sunday, where we talked about the attributes of the wicked.
Mm-hmm.
And verse 11 of Psalm 36, let not the foot of arrogance come upon me, nor the hand of the wicked drive me away. That seems, in my mind, it fits perfectly together.
Yeah. To your concern for yourself, though, if you don't put yourself first, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're not self-serving, then you're probably not going to be like Diotrephes. Because as you said, that's the way he was. That's why he did it, because he was self-serving. Okay, turn over to Galatians 6, which we're at earlier in the evening. So this is the beginning of the chapter where we read 6 through 10. My Bible titles this heading as bear one another's burdens. 6 and verse 1. Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. So this isn't somebody who is being divisive. This is just someone that you notice is caught in something that they shouldn't be. And you, being a Christian, being spiritually reminded, or spiritually minded, it is our job to help bring them back, essentially, right? They're starting to walk off of the path, and it's our job to bring it to their attention gently and bring them back. That gentleness, that's when I'm thinking about that one conversation, right? When I said there's that one conversation that can alter the course of someone's life or the course of a congregation, it's that one right there where you're trying to bring somebody back or talk to somebody who is being divisive, or maybe, as we'll read if we have time later, has sinned against you. That, all conversations matter, but those are really important. Thoughts on gently restoring someone? Mark?
The second is hospitality is helpful. If you are a hospitable person, perhaps you're also this person of gentleness that you can bring someone in and have that conversation with easier, you know?
I think it's a skill. Some people are just naturally can just have conversations with people. But I don't think, maybe it's innately in them, but it's probably due to how they were brought up and the conversations they had. Having those conversations is a skill, just like anything else. And so the more you do it, the more you've had conversations with people, and many different people. And it's easier to have hard conversations with people you have a relationship with. If the relationship is very superficial, then hard conversations are more difficult regardless of how gentle you are. Other thoughts? Yeah.
I don't know this, I don't know this restore gently, just because I don't know this, and because I'm not that person. I think there's also a time to have those hard conversations and not be so gentle. I think sometimes you can really hold somebody's hand and you can walk them right on out the door with just being kind of mediocre. I think sometimes you have to have those hard conversations and not be so gentle. I think it's a fine balance, and it's certainly something to pray about intensely sometimes, but sometimes I think there's a time that you just have to be blatantly honest and say this, of course with love in your heart and hoping for the best outcome, but you can gently send somebody to hell.
Yeah, I think you let the truth be the hard. Like, the truth says the hard words for us. If we anchor it in the truth, then our delivery can be gentle. But the truth, I mean, I agree. How about I lead with that? I agree. I think when I have seen gentle lead people to hell, or just when maybe we've gone soft on somebody, it's because we don't want to show them the truth that they're not following it, and they just continue off into it. Ryan?
So gentle is not weak. There's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Gentle has strength behind it. It's just control. So, you know, if you have to apply that strength, you can apply that strength in a way that is not intended to injure, but is intended to move.
Yeah, when I read gentle, I think of the delivery, not that, like you're saying, weak, like, hey, so have you thought about maybe the way that you're, doing these things that you maybe shouldn't do? And like, it's the delivery. If I think of the people that I would pass on the town square in Springfield, Missouri, at Missouri State, sometimes they'd come to campus. There were free speech zones where you can come say anything you want and they won't kick you out. A lot of things got said. A lot of things got said. But people who would, it's a real thing. People who would visit were these people traveling who maybe, I will use the words, who would preach fire and brimstones. And they would hold the big sign and they would just holler at people. I don't think there's any better word for it. Just holler at people through whatever speaker if they were just using their voice. And that's not restoring a brother, and I understand that. But that's sort of that's what we, sometimes you have to say hard truths. And sometimes they need to be delivered in less than a mild tone. But when I think of the opposite of gentle, I think of the guy standing in the free speech zone, shouting, calling girls all sorts of names due to the way that they're dressed and they're... and I just don't think that's effective. And I don't think that's what we're called to do. Mark?
I've had my wisdom teeth pulled out gently, but they didn't.
Still hurt?
No, but it was, I was awake, and the dentist that was doing it was applying a lot of strength and a lot of muscle, and there was a lot of effort going on, but it was gentle from my perspective, because, the way that it happened, but we'll say it.
I think everyone has great perspective on this. I think handling difficult people is important to talk about, I think especially as a body, and I was really hoping people had slightly different opinions, because when it's time to handle difficult people, that is not the time to talk about this, to make sure we're on the same page. Like, the time is before. Yeah, Rob?
So, so I think some of the translations say in the spirit of meekness, some of the translations say in the spirit of gentleness, and I think it's getting at the same thing. And Ryan behind me said that this word means strength under pressure. It's exactly the word, the translation of the word there, translated meekness or gentleness means. But what we haven't mentioned yet is the phrase right after that modifies it. In the spirit of meekness, considering yourselves lest you also be tempted. And I think that considering yourselves lest you also be tempted, it helps me understand at least what I think Paul is telling us by this spirit of meekness thing. It's do we engage in these conversations with the idea that I am just as fallible as the person that I'm talking to. I am just, maybe more so. Am I, or do we engage in these conversations thinking, boy, I'd never make that mistake, or I'd never, let me further say that there's kind of two schools of thought, two that I've heard, probably more than that, on this, considering yourselves lest you also be tempted. I've heard some people say that this is a reference to the same sin or whatever that you're having to confront this individual about, considering yourself lest you also be tempted by the same sin. I personally don't look at it like that. I think it's a general acknowledgement that that I'm human also and subject to all the same like passions as you are. And man, it's you this time that's messed up, and I'm doing my best to keep you on the path. But next time it's probably you who are going to have to help keep me on the path, because I'm just as subject to making these mistakes as you are. That helps me understand. I think if I engage with that kind of attitude, then that spirit of meekness or gentleness, whichever word you choose, kind of comes about organically.
Not from a holier than thou position. You're not the Pharisee beating his chest. Okay. All right. We will wrap up the letters to John next week. Thank you all for your comments very much.